Sudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Here, put these cartels on the side. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 6, text 17, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yuktahara viharasya Yukta cheshtasya karamasu Yukta swapna vabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukhaha Yuktahara viharasya Yukta cheshtasya karamasu Yukta swapna vabodhasya Yogo bhavati dukhaha. Translation. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Purport: extravagance in the matter of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, which are demands of the body, can block advancement in the practice of yoga. As far as eating is concerned, it can be regulated only when one is practiced to take and accept prasadam, sanctified food. Lord Krishna is offered, according to the Bhagavad Gita, vegetables, flowers, fruits, grains, milk, etc. In this way, a person in Krishna consciousness becomes automatically trained not to accept food not meant for human consumption or not in the category of goodness. As far as sleeping is concerned, a Krishna conscious person is always alert in the discharge of his duties in Krishna consciousness, and therefore any unnecessary time spent sleeping is considered a great loss. Avyartha kalatvam. A Krishna-conscious person cannot bear to pass a minute of his life without being engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore his sleeping is kept to a minimum. His ideal in this respect is Srila Rupa Goswami, who was always engaged in the service of Krishna and who could not sleep more than 2 hours a day, and sometimes not even that. Thakur Haridas would not even accept prasadam, nor even sleep for a moment without finishing the daily routine of chanting with his beads 300,000 names. As far as work is concerned, a Krishna-conscious person does not do anything which is not connected with Krishna's interest, and thus his work is always regulated and is untainted by sense gratification. Since there is no question of sense gratification, there is no material leisure for a person in Krishna consciousness, and because he is regulated in all his work, speech, sleep, wakefulness, and all other bodily activities, there is no material misery for him. Yukta ahara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapnavabodhasya yogo bhavati dukhaha. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. Alright then, so reading this verse for the second time, we read it yesterday also. Today is the disappearance day of 3 mighty personalities in the Sampradaya of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu: Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Raghunath Das and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, among their major contributions, well, particularly Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is remembered for his literary contributions of which we in ISKCON know Chaitanya Charitamrita well, but also his Govinda Lilamrita is a major work in the Gauriya Sampradaya. And Raghunath Das, although he didn't write much, but his, not much in comparison to Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, but in his Stavavali he has elucidated the topmost aspirations for Gauriyas, namely Radha Dasya, the spirit of dedicated service to Srimati Radhika. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's also, his writings are very high level, we can say. Chaitanya Charitamrita gives the essence of all the Vedic literatures, pure love of God as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Govinda Lilamrita describes the intimate pastimes of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, those intimate pastimes which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give, so entrance into. So we may think, well, that's what they came to give, well, let's go for it. Forget all this trying to control our senses and all things like that. Let's just jump into Radha Bhav. That would seem to make sense, maybe, but not really. There's a question of qualification. Just like someone may be studying science at school, and then you hear about Einstein's theories, and from Einstein's theories there's been so much more development, the latest major breakthrough being the so-called God particle or Higgs boson, and for some time the whole world of physics was thrown out by the discovery that the neutrino travels at speed faster than light, which just completely throws everything out in the whole of physics. But then they discovered, so we're told, that actually their procedures were faulty, so it travels at the speed of light and not faster than light. Anyway, if we are to understand, even begin to understand why Higgs in the first place postulated such a boson, we'd have to go through a lot of preliminary stages first. It's not that we can jump immediately from the primary class in physics, which usually doesn't begin at school till at least, 11 or 12 years old, is it? First of all, you have to get some background in basic algebra and some basic mathematics. So, similarly, we may propose, all right, well, Raghunath Das, he gave us Radha Dasya, Tavai Vasmi, Najivami, Tvaya Vina. He prays to Radha, I am yours, I cannot live without you. He expresses his extreme love for her in this way, so we may think, well, let's go for that. Let's just go immediately for that. But artificially, that will not be possible. We should also see that the 6 Goswamis, they are described as Nidrahara Vihara Kadi Vijito Chatyanta Dino Chayo. They're described as having completely conquered over eating and sleeping, as is described here in this purport, that they would sleep maybe 2 hours a day and sometimes that not also, and their eating was practically nothing. We may practice that on Ekadashi. For us it's an austerity. For them it's just a waste of time to eat and sleep. So we may think, well, that's what we should do also. Why should we waste our time eating and sleeping? We'll do hearing and chanting about Krishna. But then, if we don't have the spiritual strength to do so, then our body, lacking material strength, will not be able to continue with the practices. Sharira madhyam kalu dharma sadhanam. I partially quoted yesterday. Kalidas, the famous saying that the body is required, first of all, to practice dharma and sadhana. That's also stated in the Bhagavatam. It's as long as we're in this world, we have to maintain the body. The human form of life is very valuable, so we should practice dharma and sadhana, but we require to maintain the body. So we shouldn't imitate Rup or Raghunath in their non-eating and non-sleeping, nor should we imitate in their high level of Krishna consciousness. After Srila Prabhupada's munificent spreading of Krishna consciousness all over the world, some people have discovered that there are practitioners of Krishna consciousness who don't or have a different focus to those of to that which Srila Prabhupada gave, which was a very much develop gradually, but they've thought, well, they've seen that there are practitioners, particularly living in Radha Kund, the Babajis, who are, they just go directly, let's go for Radha's mercy. So that's maybe a nice idea, but by imitation, we cannot simply grab at something which we're not eligible to attain. That has to be given to us. We cannot just force our way in. Those who want to imitate Rupa and Raghunath by dressing in Babaji dress, let's see if they want to immediately come to the level of Radha Dasya. But what about the Nidrahara Vihara Kadi Vijito, giving up eating and sleeping? That they just can't do it so they don't do it. And they don't even emphasize that, as far as I can see. So, don't imitate. We have to be sensible. By imitating the highest level of love of God, we don't actually go up there. We're more likely to fall down into gross sense gratification. We have to be sensible. So this verse that we read today from Bhagavad Gita speaks of balance in yoga. It's in eating and sleeping, mating. Either one completely refrains from mating or one does so according to the Vedic principles. Defending, a devotee should give that up entirely, defending his own. If there's some attack on him, this not physical attack, the verbal attack. But he should also defend his body, just like you've put these plants which repel snakes, because we don't want devotees to leave their body very soon. Why? We're sensible in this regard. No, we don't want them to leave their body very soon. Of course, if that is ordained by time, then they have to go, but Krishna has given arrangements of such things, that plants that repel snakes, so that devotees may go on peacefully with their practice of Krishna consciousness. So, it is a sensible approach, very sensible approach. This section of Bhagavad Gita describes the yoga process. It's not so much philosophical as is much of the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. So this being sensible, knowing that one is not the body, but the body at this phase of my existence is the vehicle for the consciousness. We're concerned with consciousness. Consciousness is the center of the soul. We're concerned with this. We're not concerned ultimately with the body, but at the present time, our consciousness is intricately linked with the body, so we should maintain the body in a way that is sufficiently healthy so that we can practice yoga. And we should we should keep a balance, but the balance tends towards minimization, not maximization. We should minimize eating and sleeping. Of course, again we have to see what is favorable for our practice of Krishna consciousness. If by minimizing our eating and sleeping we tend to fall sick so that we cannot practice very well Krishna consciousness, we cannot serve in a manner that is expected or desired, then we should eat and sleep more. That doesn't mean we go to the other extreme, but although we should tend toward minimization, we have to see what are the limits of our body, on how far we're able to do so without becoming adversely affected. Some years ago, one devotee told me that he suffered repeatedly from severe headaches. He saw an Ayurvedic doctor who told him to sleep more, which he started to do, and the headaches went away. So that would seem to make sense, to sleep sufficiently. If by not doing so, one is beset by repeated headaches which considerably affect one's ability, adversely affect one's ability to think about Krishna and serve Krishna in various ways. So the whole principle is there of yukta vairagya, that one should practice Krishna consciousness, not being attached to anything, but using everything, beginning with the body, in Krishna's service. Yeah, it's in this balance applies in all aspects of life. Yukta vairagya means that we can use things of this world. Not that we reject things of this world. We reject the spirit of enjoyment of this world, but we can use things of this world, beginning with the body, for serving Krishna, because everything belongs to Krishna. Anasaktasya vishayan yataham upayunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Without being attached to the objects of the senses, one can use them in the service of, utilize them in the service of Krishna, seeing that everything is in relationship with Krishna, and this is called yukta vairagya, or suitable, apt renunciation. So yes, so this applies in all aspects of our Krishna conscious life. In the modern world, there are all kinds of things which have become part of everyday life, which weren't there previously. Cell phones, which are more than cell phones nowadays. What are they called when they have a camera? Smartphone. That's the official name for a phone which does a lot more than phone. Can do a lot more than. What do they have? They have. You can watch movies and you can take cameras. You take photos. What else? Tablet. What's that? Email, internet. watch movies, banking, that's also internet things. So all kinds of things. Or you can, by the internet, you can find out the temperature, not only immediately around you, but in other places also. You can find that you can have it as a compass. You can use it as a mirror. It's not meant for that. Can find the traffic situation. Oh yeah, now they used to have this GPS. For a short time people were buying GPSs, but now it's all in your smartphone, right? GPS, I'm not sure exactly what it stands for, but it means how to find your way from A to B while driving. Global positioning system. Games. Oh yeah. Buy anything online. So your whole life is in your smartphone. I don't know, because I never had one. Never had a cell phone. When cell phones came out, it was a prestige symbol. Now it's considered a necessity. When it was a prestige symbol, you used to see people, including devotees, making sure that everyone saw when they were speaking using their cell phone. This was maybe 15 years ago. And I got so many offers, let me give you a cell phone. No, thank you. Then I can phone you whenever I like. No, thank you. Don't want it. I guess that life would be better without it. So recently, this question came up to me about Brahmacaris and cell phones and laptops. How much should we get into all these things? Well, myself with my laptop, I spend considerable amount of time with my nose in a laptop, mostly for researching and writing books. Nowadays research, a lot of it means just looking up things on the internet and in the database. Research used to mean that you go to libraries, but now you have libraries online. And you'd go and meet people and find out things and look at inscriptions and all things like that. So that's still there. And in scientific research, you can't just, in all kinds of research, you may have to do some original work. But a lot of it, especially for writing books, which is why I spend a lot of time on my laptop, is available on the internet. So I do, but is that required for everyone to spend so much time? Actually, I don't spend that much, not very much time on the internet. There is a thing called internet, a phenomenon, let's be more sophisticated in our use of language, called internet addiction, in which people, they feel an urge to look up, so there's always something else or something more or something new to do, and gaming addiction. So that can also affect devotees. And how much should we use all these? These can be used for preaching, no doubt. The smartphone can be used to keep in contact with people that we're preaching to, just like there may be some students who are interested, and they take a book and then we give them a call. Did you start to read that book yet? And keep a personal touch. Previously, personal touch used to mean that you live with people, but nowadays, with the advent of phones, and especially smartphones, you can keep in touch with people using the phone. And in this way we can also cultivate people, as that term we use, to cultivate people. And in this way help to bring them into Krishna consciousness. But like anything that can be properly used in this world, it can also be misused. Srila Prabhupada, he ordered at one point not to have telex in our centers. Telex is now, as far as I know, it must be fully defunct. It was a form of communication which became largely defunct by the advent of fax, which still has some use. Fax still has some use for sending documents. But telex was a thing where you'd go down to the office and give a message and they'd type it in and then it would come out as ticker tape on the other end. If you don't know what ticker tape is, go and look it up on the internet. So there was telex. It was a new means of communication, global communication. So I used to use that a lot when I was in places like Bangladesh for keeping in contact with my regional secretary, who I would have to run things past, keep in contact with him about major things going on in our world. But Srila Prabhupada said we should not install them in our centers because that will simply increase the prajalpa, he said. And we can practically see that with the advent of email, and then after that there's the social media, which means Facebook and Twitter and some other things also, some other social media, that it's increased the facility for prajalpa, or idle talk, which is not really necessary. Email, internet also. So how much should we use these things and how much not? Well, we have to see how much they can be properly utilized in Krishna's service. The problem is that not every devotee is so discriminating as to properly use everything in Krishna's service, and there is the tendency, as with non-devotees, to have this internet addiction and to be on the internet or using these smartphones or laptops more than we need to. How far do we go? I don't know if it's still a rule, but I know, at least I heard that at ISKCON Pune, devotees were not allowed to have cell phones. Do you know if that's still a rule? Are you in Pune? They're using it now. I heard that at one point that wasn't allowed, which could make things somewhat inconvenient. But it also prevents any misuse. That's one way to stop misuse. Of course, by the principle of Yukta Vairagya, we should just use everything for Krishna's service. But on the other hand, we see that in the name of preaching, often facilities are misused. We may build a big temple with the aim of preaching. Well, Srila Prabhupada himself personally did that, and that idea was first introduced by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in our Gauriya Sampradaya, to have built up big temples for preaching purposes. But we see that then devotees may become attached to that, to various facilities, to living comfortably. Although living comfortably is not banned, but when the living comfortably, one can live comfortably so that one can preach Krishna consciousness. But when preaching Krishna consciousness becomes secondary and living comfortably becomes primary, then our ability to preach Krishna consciousness becomes completely compromised, because Krishna consciousness and or spiritual life is just the opposite of living comfortably in this world. If that's our aim and object, then we can't prosecute Krishna consciousness properly. And then we may need to see about having some funds to maintain a big institution. But then when collection of money becomes prominent instead of preaching Krishna consciousness, then we become more money conscious than Krishna conscious. As I sometimes give the example that why are we collecting funds? So that we can preach Krishna consciousness. But we can't preach Krishna consciousness because we're collecting funds. We're too busy collecting funds, and if we actually preach Krishna consciousness, we're afraid that people won't give us any money because they don't like what we have to say. So it just comes down to collecting money. So although everything can be used in Krishna's service, unless we have a strong sense of renunciation from this world and of being engaged in Krishna's service, then we may, in the name of Yukta Vairagya, tend to misuse the facilities that we're supposed to be using in Krishna's service. Or we may use them in Krishna's service, but there's considerable marginal usages also. Just here I've suggested that don't have cell phones at all. Just keep a landline. Keep things as simple as possible. One thing will keep the expenses down. And you don't phone every time there's just like if I ask one devotee to call someone else, I'm in that building and here, and then they'll call them by phone instead of just walking over. We become accustomed to using a cell phone even when it's not necessary. So you just keep a landline. And then the number of phone calls will decrease much, and it'll just come down to what is necessary. It will come down closer to what is necessary rather than what we just have a habit, just every time call someone up for every little thing. But it seems that although the devotees who have come here, they're able to give up city life and give up electricity and accept so many austerities, but there's one austerity which is just too much for them, which is giving up their phone. So far that didn't happen. Among Brahmacaris also, it doesn't seem very suitable that they have the latest, most fashionable phone. There's time to time this Apple company, they bring out their newest edition of the iPhone, and there are people queuing up outside the stores overnight so they can be first in line to get these so they can get the first models. Some kind of craziness. They sit. I was sitting in an airport somewhere, I can't remember where, and just waiting to board the flight, and there's TV and there's news in America of the latest iPhone or iPod or iPad or something or other being released, and there's talking about it, and the broadcaster, a woman of course, was talking about, oh, it's so wonderful and we're so excited. As if life is made worth living by the latest iPhone. Just okay, if you have one you can use it, but to get excited about it, oh, so wonderful. Latest computer, latest iPod. What is an iPod anyway? Huh? What's the difference between an iPod and an iPhone? iPod is only for listening to music. There's an iPhone you can use it for talking. But I thought it was all in one these days. An iPod is only for music.
Now you can view also. You can see videos also.
You can see videos also on iPods. Okay, all right. It doesn't seem necessary that the Brahmachari has to have the latest model with all the latest fancy apps or whatever it is. And then devotees may say, well, someone gave it, my brother gave it to me, my father gave it to me. Or the latest fancy computer, most expensive. Why? If you need an expensive computer, if your service requires it, then have it. Otherwise, don't. And then one brahmachari has a very expensive one, someone else has a less expensive one, and among neophyte devotees there may be some kind of prestige or envy. You may say, well, my relative gave it to me, but should you accept it? We should see first of all, do I need this for my service? They want to give it, you may say no, or one should ask permission even. That can I accept this or not? If it's such an expensive thing, tell them to give the money instead for prasadam distribution or whatever, for a festival. The idea that, relating to the son or brother as a son or a brother, no, I'm a servant of Krishna now, so brahmachari life should tend toward simplicity. And even grihastha life in Krishna consciousness. Of course, there may be very rich, sophisticated devotees also. It's not that everyone has to live as a beggar, but unless you happen to be born in a very rich family, there's no point to endeavor as a grihastha to be very rich or to have status symbols. This is all nonsense. Status symbols, just nonsense. You have to, buying a fancy car so that you can show that you're rich, and the fancy car costs so much money, and you can get from A to B in an ordinary car without a fancy car, without spending extra huge amounts of money. So devotees, their tendency should be to live very simply. Yuktahara, all right. So we should not eat too much or too little, but the tendency should be toward less, not more, towards simple, not extravagant. There may be feasts for devotees, but the tendency should be toward simple. These are basic principles of spiritual life. It's not anything. It's not it's not Raghunath Das Goswami calling out for Radharani. But we have to start somewhere. We have to start with very basic principles. These basic things should be understood. Otherwise, if we're somewhere in between a materialistic enjoyer and a spiritualist, it doesn't work. If we're cultivating the spirit of being a materialistic enjoyer, to that extent that we cultivate it, then we can't advance in Krishna consciousness. There's some license, Srila Prabhupada said, some license in grihastha life for sense enjoyment. It's a license, it means it's restricted. Not that family, one who lives in the family, and they have a full scope to indulge in all kinds of things. Why, if one is in Krishna consciousness, why do you have to have the latest, best, most expensive iPod, iPhone, and computer and all these things? Again, if one needs it for one's service, or one in family life may need it, may need a sophisticated computer if he's doing, I don't know, some freelance graphic work or something like this. He may need some more fancy computer. But in general, we should spend money what is needed in Krishna's service. When we're spending for personal things, what we need, that's all. Now, the disciple, they should want to offer all good things to the Guru, but the Guru shouldn't want to live in a very fancy lifestyle. So there's some dichotomy there. Srila Prabhupada, he would sometimes accept things like fancy rings and watches. He'd wear it for some time and then give it away. He traveled by flight. At some point he started going in first class. He wanted a fancy car to travel around India, and he wanted painted on the side of it, Guru of the Americans, something like this. So that was to impress people, because in India at that time especially, people were very much taken up by Western materialism. I remember coming to India in the late 1970s, and I had a cheap Timex watch. You probably have them in India now, Timex. Timex is mostly cheap, but quite functionable, reliable watches. But the fact that it was a foreign watch, and better, considerably better than any watch in India at that time, attracted attention wherever I went. And people would say, "Oh, where's that watch? Foreign watch." And so many people offered to buy it that eventually I sold it to someone and got an Indian watch, and then I wasn't bothered. Although the watch didn't keep time as well, but I didn't get bothered by this. There was at one time in our movement, that was during the days of Bhagavan and Bhavananda, they were into showing a lot of opulence, and it became among devotees that themselves they like to show what kind of watch you have, and Seiko watch became the minimum for any self-respecting member of ISKCON, which is more expensive, not top of the line. And then one devotee discovered in Hong Kong the imitation Rolex watches, which illegal, but very impressive. And then Volvo cars, expensive cars in England, all the devotees were driving Volvos. And there came a point where no insurance company would insure us because devotees were expert at crashing the cars, wasting huge amounts of money by mistreating cars and crashing them, and not putting water because they're in such a rajasic rush to go somewhere, they don't bother checking the water before they go. And what happens when you don't put water in the radiator is it cracks, and then the car doesn't run anymore, and you have to spend lots of money to get it repaired, and so on and so on and so on. So opulence can be used in Krishna service. Srila Prabhupada, he had very opulent facilities in places like Melbourne and London and New York, and devotees would invite prominent people of the meat-eating society to come. Not specifically meat eaters, but I'm just saying that they're prominent mlechas, that's the point. And Srila Prabhupada would speak to them, and they would have some measure of respect for him, because now is not the time for using the smartphone for taking photos, please. You can translate that into Telugu if he doesn't understand. So people who came, they would have some respect for Srila Prabhupada and respect for our movement. That in the beginning our movement was seen as just a bunch of wild hippies jumping around on the streets, just beggars and completely useless people. But then when they got big facilities, George Harrison donated this Bhaktivedanta manor, then people started to see us differently. So that does have an effect. Srila Prabhupada also first brought his American disciples to India, and that had a great effect. But Srila Prabhupada told them, okay, that's a good start, but now you have to build temples. And he started the projects in Mayapur, Vrindavan and Bombay for building big opulent temples so that people would be impressed. If they're impressed, they'll give some respect and they'll like to come. And if they come, we can preach to them. That's the whole idea. Not that the main function is that we will live very comfortably. So opulence can be used for Krishna's service, but we should be very careful not to accept any more than we need for our service. For Grihastas, they have some license, but they also shouldn't be sense enjoyers. If a Grihasta has sufficient funds, then he can have a nice car. We're not saying no one should not have a nice car. And Brahmacaris may also use good cars for going here and there for preaching. We don't have to have the best cars, but generally, if you spend more, you get what you pay for. So if we buy some 15-year-old second-hand car, it's more likely to be troublesome than buying a new car. So we may spend the extra money to buy a new car which runs well. So these are all very basic considerations, but Sri Krishna speaks of them here in Bhagavad Gita for the aspiring transcendentalist. So in our aiming for the highest goal of pure love of God, and even beyond love of God, is there anything beyond love of God? Well, there's love of God's girlfriend. So Radha Dasya, as exemplified by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, and of course also Rupa Goswami. That is the ultimate aim, but we have to start with regulating our life and regulating our desires in Krishna consciousness. With this cell phones and this and that, we have to see to what extent is it we're using well in Krishna consciousness, or is it being a distraction to our practice of Krishna consciousness? So Hare Krishna. Any question about this, please? Or any thoughts? Yes, please.
In a year, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we have for the opportunity to have your presence here and listen to your personally. Some other times, even if you listen to your lectures regularly, we are not able to match with your speed of the lecture. So,
Max, what is that? Sorry? Max?
Match.
Match?
Yeah.
Match what?
With the speed of your delivering lectures every day.
Oh.
So, and there is so much of Bani of Srila Prabhupada also available. So in a farm community where we are supposed to have simple living, like all those gadgets,
What do we do in a farm community? Well, the main thing Srila Prabhupada was stressed, actually more than hearing his recorded lectures, was to read his books. He also said that hearing is more important than reading. Hearing and explaining, he said, specifically. So we can go on with our regular program of hearing and chanting based on Prabhupada's books. That's the basic program for all devotees everywhere. Other facilities, hearing Srila Prabhupada's lectures, we also emphasize that. But if you don't have those facilities, it may not be always there also. But the main thing in our spiritual life is hearing and chanting and studying Srila Prabhupada's books like this. It's the main thing. And for city preaching, we may be more sophisticated and we may study trends in science and politics and so many things. But for day-to-day preaching, it's not required, actually. If we simply study Srila Prabhupada's books, that's sufficient for basic preaching of Krishna consciousness. And there's so much in Prabhupada's books. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.